I found out 10 days ago that my wife of 6 years was captured on camera with 2 male dancers at a friend's bachelorette party. The event was secretly recorded with a cell phone camera by another woman. The woman then went home and told her boyfriend, who was an acquaintance of mine. I have seen the guy here and there, but we are not friends. She told him not to tell the girls or expose the video, and they kept it hidden all those years. Mind you, me and this guy are not friends, and we never got along. We went to high school together, so we have mutual friends. His girlfriend told him not to release the video or tell anyone. They broke up a while ago, and ever since then, he's been sharing it around with his friends, like a go-to story, on every get-together meeting or guys' night out, just for kicks and giggles. Most of the women captured performing indecent acts on the video were in some sort of relationship at the time. I am sure they were making fun of me and the other guys, or maybe that's my paranoia speaking, because the story never got around to me or any close friends of mine, until about a month ago, when our mutual friend was hanging out with him over a drink. One thing led to another, the topic got brought up. The story goes that this guy kept joking about how his now ex-girlfriend captured a bunch of girls going wild at a bachelor party, and 2 dancers ganged up on one of the women. And that woman happens to be my girlfriend at the time, now wife. He was having problems with his girlfriend at the time and had her under a microscope, so she was documenting where she goes to prove to him that she's faithful. I guess he suspected that his girlfriend would cheat on him on the bachelor party, so she captured everything on camera as an alibi to show her then-boyfriend that she was innocent, thereby implicating her other friends to prove to her then-boyfriend that she was the innocent one, the good one. According to our mutual friend, the woman went backstage to the dancer's dressing room, including the one with the camera. My girlfriend was the only one that went all in, not just BJ and flashing. She took on both dancers at the same time in their dressing room, while her other friends gave BJ and flashing. She was being plowed by both dancers while the other woman secretly recorded. After learning about this a month ago, my friend wanted to tell me, but he was struggling with the decision because he knows that I am now happily married to her. He was close to me and my wife. He knows we love each other so much. We have 2 girls together, a 3 and a 5-year-old. 11 days ago, on a Friday, my friend called me and told me that he wanted to tell me something important, and I should join him for a drink the following day. Just by the way he sounded, I thought it was very important. I thought he was going through some rough patch and wanted somebody to talk to. I have always been there for him and his family. We are that close since high school. The following day, we met up at a bar. He was there when I showed up. He was acting all nervous when I came in. The moment I looked at him, I could tell that he was worried about something. I had a feeling that it was about me, not him. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I'm a big guy, 6'3", been in jail a couple of times, all for gang-related stuff, so I had a reputation. But all that is in the past. I have always been a natural leader among my peers, and a lot of guys look up to me. I used to be really aggressive, and I got into a lot of fistfights in my teenage years. But going to jail a couple of times has changed me, along with getting married and having kids. I haven't been in trouble for over 8 years. I am less aggressive now and calmer and more mature now that I have 2 kids and a good job as a union electrician. Me and this friend of mine go way back. I used to protect him from bullies back when we were in high school. He is a year younger than I am at 29 years old, and he works a nice corporate job. So my and his crowds didn't mingle that much. Anyways, when I sat on the bar stool, I knew that it was about me based on his body language, which made me more anxious. I turned towards him and asked him how he was doing and what was going on. He responded that what he was going to tell me would really mess up my relationship with my wife, but he felt like I needed to know. He didn't want me to find out years later that he knew about it but didn't tell me, and felt like he would be lying to me anytime he meets me, because he's holding back on something that I should know. At this point, I felt like he should go ahead and say it already. Then he said that a few weeks back, he was hanging out with some of his friends, and one of them showed him a video from about 5 years ago of my wife banging 2 dancers in the dressing room. Men, when I heard that, I couldn't believe it. The emotion going through my brain at the time was that of anger, confusion, shame, all at the same time. I wanted to punch him in the mouth. I thought he was playing some kind of prank on me, but I knew it was true, because I remember the day she went to this particular bachelorette party. She'd told me days ahead that she was going to a bachelorette party for one of her friends. Back then, we would have been dating exclusively for about 7 months, but hadn't moved in together. My girlfriend was from a traditional Irish Catholic family, really beautiful. I love my wife very much, so my first instinct is to defend her honor and reputation. The old me would have beat up my friend for even telling me that. Maybe that's why the acquaintance never bothered to tell me, because I had a violent reputation. I asked my friend if he had the video, and he said that it was on his friend's phone and that he only saw part of it. I knew he was lying because nobody just watches part of a thing like that, but that doesn't matter now. I knew he didn't bring me all the way out here to lie about my wife's affair, because that is a dangerous prank to pull on somebody like me. I asked him how I can meet the guy with the video, and my friend said that he could set something up. I asked him if I can get the guy's number, then my friend excused himself to step outside and give the guy a call. We went outside, and then he came back in and told me that the guy wasn't answering, but he texted him. He told me that he would get back with me as soon as he heard something back. I wanted to leave the bar and call my wife immediately, but my friend told me that I should relax a bit. Spend time to think things through before going home and doing something stupid. So I decided to spend some time at the bar. I talked to him about my relationship with my wife, which had been great up to that point. I didn't expect her to do something like that. She did have a wild streak about her during the first year that we dated. Obviously, I didn't know how wild it was till now. But it appeared at the time, after a year of us dating, that she turned things around and she left all that behind. She does turn to somebody different when she drinks. The first year I met her, she was still going through a party phase in her life. But that doesn't excuse anything, because we were in a committed relationship when she went to that bachelorette party. We have had our ups and downs, just like any other relationship, and her alcohol problem was an issue at some point, but she got it under control because of our first daughter. While I was talking to my friend, he received a text message from the guy, saying that he could give me his number. I called him immediately and asked him if he could meet up to give me the video on a flash drive, and he said that he was currently out of town and would be coming back the following week. I told him that I would like to get a copy of the video, and I want him to tell me how much he wants me to pay him to delete it from his cell phone or any other place he stores it after giving it to me. I was hoping that he would say he was going to willingly delete any copy he had, but he said that I should pay him $1,500, one of the reasons why I never liked him to begin with. I was able to bid it down to $1,000. He had no reason to hold on to this video. My wife and his ex-girlfriend are no longer friends, and his ex-girlfriend is not going to hold that up against him, I think. So he had no reason to be asking for money except to be an a-hole. At the same time, I'm glad he asked for money, so I know that he can draft a legal agreement that he cannot release the video to the public, and I wind up owning the only copy. I am not only trying to protect my wife, I'm trying to protect my daughters as well as saving myself from further embarrassment. The thought of having a tape of my wife out there on the internet will be a huge embarrassment for me and my family. So I wanted to control this as much as possible and deal with my wife later. From what I heard, the video is too graphic to even think about. That night, I was too drunk to drive, so I had to take a lift home and leave my car at the bar parking lot. When I got home, I could barely walk through the door. All I remembered was calling my wife a streetwalker and passing out. I wanted to confront her that night, but I was too drunk to pull it off. The following day, I woke up with a hangover, on my couch, and a blanket around me. My wife was supposed to go to work that day, if I remember correctly, but she called off work because she was worried about me and wanted to find out what my strange behavior was all about. She gave me some water as I sat on the couch. After drinking, she asked me what was going on. I looked at her, and all the memories from the previous night just filled my head. I have never been so mad at my wife for a long time, and I needed some answers. The thought of her doing all kinds of stuff with 2 dancers was all I could think about when I looked at her. I couldn't even say a word to her. I just started sobbing like a baby. I don't remember the last time I cried. That was the lowest moment of my life. My wife was so confused, and she started crying too, and wanted to hug me, but I told her to get away from me. She was frustrated at this point, asking me what was going on. I told her there is a video out there of her getting run through by 2 dancers at a bachelorette party 5 years ago. The look on her face was like she was confused. Then she started saying that it's not true and that it's fake, trying to deny it. She said that it's not possible. I reminded her what bachelorette party it was and asked her if she was there or not. She said she was there but did not cheat on me. She told me that it was all lies. I told her that maybe she was drinking and have done it while intoxicated. She responded that she would remember banging 2 guys. She told me that I should show her the video, and I said that the guy with the video is out of town. At this point, I really wanted to believe her so bad. She seemed very firm and sure that it wasn't her. I thought maybe it was a shakedown to rob $1,000 from me. But that's not much money that would be worth a stunt like that. I wanted to see the video so badly to make sure that she was telling the truth. The message I received from the guy was that he would be back in town on Tuesday. Today is Sunday, and I have been restless. I couldn't think of anything else but that video. My wife has been running around the house doing extra stuff like she's guilty, asking me if I'm okay all the time, like I am the crazy person, like I just made up all this story. Who would make up such a thing? On Monday, I couldn't wait longer. I told the guy that we don't need to meet right away, that I can Cash App him $1,000 and he can download the video through Dropbox. He said that he didn't have enough space on his Dropbox and can't delete them to create enough space for the video. Then I told him to open another Dropbox, which he did. By Monday evening, I sent him $1,000 on Cash App, and he sent a link to the video. I opened the video and saw a bunch of women that I recognized as my wife's friends back then, shouting with excitement as the dancers were dancing around them. Then I saw my wife touching the dancers and their Johnson through their pants. The footage then cut to the dressing room with my wife, the other 2 women on their knees, BJ, preparing the dancers. I counted about 5 guys, if you know what I mean. Then another footage of my wife taking it from behind, still clothed, with 2 dancers taking turns. The video was as graphic as I thought, so much so that I thought I was watching some badly made amateur stuff. It was clearly her. There was no mistaking it. The sound of her voice was unmistakable. The private moment I thought was shared by just me and her was shared with complete strangers. It appears that the dancers were aware of the recording but didn't care. I wasn't sure that my girlfriend and her other friends were aware because they never showed acknowledgement. She was not being coerced. She was actively seeking attention. In some case, she was the aggressor. She gave it up to a bunch of guys she met that night. But the very first time I met her, she acted like she wasn't so easy. While I didn't get the sense that she was some sort of Virgin Mary when we started dating, she didn't pretend to be that way because she was a party girl at the time. She made me wait for about 2 months before our first intimate encounter. Basically, everything I know about my wife is now being questioned. In our current relationship, for her to even give me a blow is a big deal, especially after we had our second daughter. And here she was blowing complete strangers with such enthusiasm and didn't even hold anything back. I just feel like venting because all this time I felt that there is some special moments you share with someone you love, and I feel like the bubble just blew up all over my face. This really is affecting my self-esteem, and the worst part is I keep thinking that I wasn't enough for her back then, and I am now not enough for her now. I have a few extra pounds on me now, but back then I was in shape. I'm a good-looking guy, I think, but yet she did this and willfully gave it away to these guys. I'm curious about how often this happens to any of you guys in a relationship, because it couldn't have just been me. Because my wife, up to the point I saw this video, was almost perfect, a good mother to my 2 girls, and takes care of me. She is not lazy like the most wayward wife I read about on this site. And she is totally traditional now. Maybe I wouldn't say that when we started dating, but over time she grew into it, which is what makes this so difficult to just walk away from. Answering your question about if they used protection, they did. It's not like it matters, but they were using protection, and she was so into it that she probably wouldn't notice if they didn't. I remember vividly how much she reminded me about protection the first time we did it. I thought she gained some points in my book back then, which makes me think that maybe our relationship all this time was just a big sham. Maybe I don't know who she really is. Maybe she had other partners that I didn't even know about. Maybe she would have sworn on her life that the person wasn't her before I saw the video. If I heard about the video and not seen it, I would have believed her. That's how convincing she was. Now, what other things am I believing that isn't true? When she came back home that evening, I connected the video to my TV so she can clearly see it that it was her. I clearly overdid it because I was so angry at her. I thought she would be remorseful or beg for forgiveness, but nope, it was like she had enough time to come up with excuses. She now said that we weren't in an exclusive relationship at the time, and even went as far as saying that we weren't in a relationship. I responded that even if she was right that we weren't exclusive at the time, even though we both knew that she was lying. How is it normal to be getting a train ran on her by 2 men? The fact that the character she portrayed to me and have been acting out ever since we met is not the same person I see on the video. Then she changes her story again, saying that she was drunk and the alcohol caused them to take advantage of her. I told her that she was clearly a willing participant, and at no point in the video did she resist. She responded that the video was doctored and not showing the full picture. She also claimed that alcohol contributed to it. She might be a little tipsy, but was fully aware. Her motor skills were functioning normally, and she was not slurring her words. She continued to lie and make excuses. I didn't want to fight with her, and I felt like she was making excuses and wouldn't fully admit it. She was upset at me for bringing this up because she said that it shouldn't matter because we were just friends with benefits back then and weren't in a relationship, and that's in her past. And how do I feel if she held my past against me? She took me for who I was. Why am I not willing to give her that? So, it's not fair to hold that up against her. I have never been violent with my wife. We just don't have that type of toxic relationship. And it never occurred to me to be that way, but by the way, she was making excuses and wouldn't take responsibility for her actions. I came really close. I didn't want to wake up the kids, and I couldn't stand her that night. So I decided to leave the house with a few clothes and went to my coworker's house to cool off, because I didn't want to do something that I would regret, because I was already on probation. Update. I took some of my casual and work outfits and went to stay with a single friend. That was also a coworker. My friend kept calling me to come back home, but I didn't answer her. I knew that eventually I had to face the music, but I was so angry at the time that I couldn't be around her. She kept texting me about how I'm not willing to forgive her about her past, that she was able to let go of me being sent to jail for almost a year for aggravated assault and currently being on probation for 10 years, which have held me back for most of my life, and that had held me back from moving up in life. I didn't go to college, but my wife did, and she works as a physical therapist, but I still make more than her because I work as a union electrician by day and take on projects on the side, mostly during the evening and after work, that are very lucrative. I felt like our marriage has been a joke. I wasn't sure who she really was. I'm not saying that I thought that I was marrying a unicorn when I proposed to her, and I know that almost everybody has some skeleton in the closet, but this one was too much. I knew she had some miles on her when we got together, but I thought it was just like any normal party girl. I remember when I asked her how many guys she'd been with, she said 5, which was an obvious lie because that was after the bachelor party, and I knew of 3 of her previous boyfriends and 2 of the short flings that she had. So who knows how many more that I wasn't aware of. But yet, a part of me was still thinking that despite all that, we could still have a great relationship, but then again, part of me is telling me who knows what other lies she's told me. At this point, I was really confused, and my life was in shambles. I can't continue to stay with my friend because I had some electrical projects to work on and some deadlines to meet. My house serves as storage and office for all my equipment, so I can't hide out at my friend's house for long. 2 days later, I had to come back home because I still have shared responsibilities as a dad and contract deadline to keep up. Divorce or legal separation wasn't even in my mind yet at that point. I was still trying to process all the information. I was so depressed, I lost my appetite and felt like I needed to speak to somebody. I'm close with my dad, and he's always been there for me in times of trouble. Even though when I was younger, I didn't listen to his advice, and it got me into a lot of trouble. The more I get older, the more I listen to him. I called him and told him about my situation. He was surprised, because he didn't expect my wife to be that type of woman, although he knew she had some checkered past just like me. My parents loved my wife because they thought she brings out the best of me, and thought she was a positive influence on me. She showed them the side she needed them to see. My wife was good at that. Nobody that knew her would think she was that kind of person. Maybe, unless you were her close friend. My dad had been married to my mom for 36 years, so he knows a thing or two about relationships. Although, you could say that women back in the days were different, because they didn't have access to social media that amplifies their access to men and means of seeking validation beyond their localized area. Now, women of nowadays would have men from various parts of the world hitting them up. I found this out when I checked out my wife's social media. More of that later. I spoke to my dad, and he encouraged me to go home, said I should be the stable force in the household for the sake of my kids. He told me that I should listen to her on a non-judgmental way so she may be less defensive and attempt to give reconciliation if she puts in an effort. He said that the grass is not always greener, that if my wife was able to fool me, what is to say that the next woman wouldn't do the same? He said that I should work with what I've got at the moment. What's done is done, but it would still be difficult because that is something that I would never forget. And if it gets too hard to forgive her, then I should start looking for plan B. After speaking with my dad, I had an extra boost of motivation to go back home and deal with this situation. When I went back home to take my daughters to school, I met my wife and she wanted to talk to me in private. I told her that we would talk when I came home that night. She seems to have been crying for a while. I didn't really feel sorry for her because she hasn't even admitted that she did anything wrong. I received a text from the acquaintance that he had deleted his copy and doesn't have the footage anymore. Since I couldn't verify that, I just took his word for it. I also told him that I would send him some legal papers as we previously agreed upon. My wife was already home when I got home that night. I was ready for her to come clean and admit that she cheated on me and that she pretty much lied and portrayed herself as someone she wasn't in the beginning of our relationship. She was seated in the balcony when I got home. Even looking at her, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I felt like the image of her that I had before had been shattered. It's like I saw her with a new lens. I used to think that I was the only one with the checkered past, but at least everybody knows mine, and I'm willing to own up to it. When I got home, she was in the balcony. We normally hang out and talk on the balcony in front of my house, and it was summer, and the weather here in Massachusetts is always nice during the summer. She greeted me when she saw me, but I didn't respond to her. I went into the house and took a shower and changed for my work clothes. A few minutes later, I joined her in the balcony with a beer in my hand. I sat down and we just sat quiet for a few minutes. My plan was to let her speak and see what other lies she comes up with. I could tell she was ready for me to start pouncing on her, interrogating her, but instead, I allowed the awkwardness to set in. She started by saying that she was sorry for being unfaithful to me, and that was a different time in her life. She said she just started our relationship and she wasn't sure it was going to last, and that she was still in a party phase of her life, and did things that she regrets. She said that she regretted it after doing it and has been faithful to me ever since. At this point, I interjected to ask her why she had sex with those men the same night she met them, and I waited for months for her to have sex with me, and while she kept saying she wasn't ready yet. She responded that she wanted our first to be special and to mean something, and that the sex with the dancers didn't mean anything to her. This made absolutely no sense to me. I told her she was on her knees with them on the first day, but sometimes I had to wait for a special occasion. She would use sex as a reward system to me, and here she was just doing it with some randos in the most explicit way in front of friends. If she wasn't secretly being recorded, she would have taken it to her grave. I asked her what other affairs she had that wasn't recorded, that wasn't on tape. She responded that there was no other affair. I told her that I didn't believe her. She said that I should feel free to check her phone and social media, that she was telling the truth. I told her that she had enough time to edit her story, then she had enough time to delete any incriminating evidence from her phone. Although I didn't think that I would find anything on her phone, I still took her up on it. I told her that I would monitor her phone communication and her social media. She gave me her password to everything. Although I didn't feel satisfied after the conversation, I felt like she admitted to her wrongdoing, which is a start, although I still feel like there was a lot that she was not revealing. Whether it's true or not, the seed of doubt has been planted in my mind, and there was no way I could trust her ever again. But I took the advice of my dad to give it a try. That night, I couldn't sleep in the same bedroom with her, so I told her to sleep in the guest room. The following day, I didn't want to log into my wife's social media because I knew that I wouldn't find anything, because she must have wiped everything clean if she was dirty. However, I couldn't get my mind off it. I couldn't focus at work, so I logged into her social media and read all her messages. I was constantly monitoring her social media, and I soon realized how unhealthy it was. She wasn't posting any sort of explicit content, but it was amazing how many guys were messaging her, and I noticed that she was deleting them so I wouldn't see it because I had the notification set up, and I would check on a message that I had just received a notification for, but it would be gone by the time that I had a chance to check. I thought maybe most attractive women get this type of attention, even those that weren't posting anything erotic. Most of the men are from the Middle East and South Asian countries, so there was nothing to worry about there. Fast forward a week later, I was still having problems with my wife, but at least we were on speaking terms. We have not been intimate since I found out about the affair, but she's been trying to seduce me and was growing tired of my constant refusal to let things go. We had a conversation one time, and she said that we should see a marriage counselor because she was getting tired of the way I was acting. I told her this is not something I can easily let go by just talking to someone. I wasn't sure that our marriage would survive this affair, and it was really exhausting playing FBI on her social media and texting platform. So I stopped, and even I felt worse because I felt like I couldn't trust her. I even felt like people are talking behind my back. One time, I was at a local bar with some friends. Then I saw some guys that I knew hung out with the guy that sold me the footage. I felt like they were looking at me and turning away when I looked back. I felt like they were mocking me. I thought I was being paranoid because if I had not seen the video, I would have not taken them seriously or given it a second thought. But because of the tape, I felt like everyone is laughing at me behind my back. It's a really sobering feeling. I felt depressed and ashamed and even angry sometimes. I felt like I was being disrespected. The old me would have gone there and given them something else to make fun of. These were grown men acting like little kids, but I guess people sometimes don't grow up. I simply just left the bar and went home early. 2 weeks after D-Day, I haven't slept with my wife, and I was trying to get into marriage counseling to give it a try because I was having problems letting go or being intimate because the thought was always in my head. My wife scheduled some sessions. After work, we get a babysitter and went. Before visiting the session, I was under the impression that the therapist would try to blame me for everything, just like I read off on this site. But that was not the case. The therapist put my wife on the spot in a polite way, of course. I'm not going to get into more detail, so I can cut this story short, but it was almost like a cross-examination for her to come clean and everything to build back my trust. And more truth came out that my wife was not comfortable with. And by the way, she reacted I felt like there were a lot more incidents like that, but I guess we would never know. I felt like she was not telling the entire truth, and my therapist felt the same way as well. The therapist encouraged us to reconcile and gave us some techniques to help us build trust. I didn't feel like reconciliation would work because my wife was trying to control what I know. After our third session, I felt like my wife was losing interest in the therapy session because she kept feeling like she was under attack. There were things that I was learning about her that I wasn't aware of, and a side of her personality that comes out during the session which she is not comfortable with. She tried to convince me to change to another therapist, but I refused. So she started coming up with excuses, doing things like showing up late and saying she's too busy at work to prevent us from making it. She even called ahead of time to cancel sometimes without letting me know. All this convinced me that she's not making an effort to take more responsibility for her actions. This was about 6 weeks or so after I found out about the affair. Update. I finally spoke with that friend that told me that my wife had a video out. I asked him if he knew about how many people knows about the video. He said that he was actually the last to know among his friends, and that most of his friends and people we went to high school with already knows, and that it was by mistake that he actually found out. I asked him about the guys that were laughing at me the other day, and it appears that they knew about it as well. So I wasn't crazy then. I felt like most of the guys I come across in common areas around town knew, or have seen the video, and for obvious reasons, I was the last to know. You could imagine how embarrassing that was for me. I came home and told my wife how much it bothered me that a lot of people have seen the tape, and there's a possibility that it's still out there, and she suggested that we move out of the area and that she's willing to change her job. Just by the way she said it, I knew she must have been thinking about moving before I even found out about the video. It was just a feeling. It seems like she's always a few steps ahead of me. I feel like she knew that there were rumors of it floating around, and it's possible that she knew about the video before I found out. I thought it would be a good idea to track down some of his friends that were present in that video. I know some fell off the map and are no longer friends with my wife, and some are still friends with my wife and wouldn't speak to me honestly about that because they will try to cover for her. And those that weren't her friend anymore have moved out of town. I tried to message them through Facebook, but none of them have responded yet. Update. It's been 3 months after D-Day, and I had sex with my wife. Well, I succumbed to the primal nature. My wife has been walking around the house intentionally trying to seduce me, and one night I gave in. It was more purely desire and frustration more than anything else. I didn't feel any love involved like I used to feel before. She stayed in the master bedroom for the very first time since I found out about the video. The following night, she tried initiating sex, but I was not into it. I usually don't deny my wife sex, so she was frustrated. She was willing to do anything in the bedroom that I used to beg her to do before, but I wasn't interested. She tried to cuddle me that night, but I felt like I was being smothered. I endured it for one more night, but couldn't take it anymore, so I started sleeping on the couch because I wasn't getting any sleep. The following day, she said she hated to see me suffer like this over nothing and suggested that she would give me a hall pass for a year. But I told her that she doesn't get it. I told her that having sex with other women wouldn't erase the fact that she is not the same person that I thought she was. Sex with other women means nothing to me. I want something more meaningful with somebody I love, but I feel like I can't get it from her anymore. About 4 months, I called my dad and told him that. I don't think I can forgive my wife, and that I was thinking about legally separating from her. My dad said that I should probably move to another place for a couple of months. Maybe time would heal things. When I got home that day, I broke the news to my wife that I would be looking for another apartment close to our house so I can still see the kids as often as before. She pleaded with me, but I have already made up my mind. Update. 1 week later, I signed a month-to-month lease for a furnished studio apartment near my house. All this time, I've been having second thoughts about the whole separation thing. I didn't want to move away from my kids or leave my wife. I really tried to stay, but I felt like an intermittent separation away from my wife will be good for my sanity. My intention was not to move out permanently, but to take some time for myself. Plus, I still have keys to my house where I have my tools and equipment for work. The night before I moved to my apartment, I had a serious argument with my wife. She all but lost it on me. She said she had been giving me space throughout this whole process, enough to come to my senses. But she thinks that I'm acting completely irrational. She said that I've gone completely mad for abandoning them for something that happened when she wasn't even sure that we were in a relationship. I told her that I believe there are still things that she's not telling me, and I need some time to get myself together. She asked me how much time we're going to be separated for, and I said that I will give it 2 months. The majority of my things are still in the house. We agreed that we would be moving toward the path of reconciliation. After I moved into my studio apartment, I felt relaxed. The first day was tough because my wife was really upset at me. She even went as far as telling my 5-year-old daughter that I have abandoned them. Who tells that to a 5-year-old? When I came to take my 5-year-old to kindergarten and 2-year-old to daycare, my 5-year-old daughter told me that Mom was crying, and when she asked her what was going on, she said that Daddy has abandoned them. I responded to my daughter that I didn't abandon them because I'm still here taking them to school. After I dropped my daughters off, I called my wife and told her that she should be ashamed of herself for trying to influence my kids by feeding them lies about me. I told her not to get them involved in this. She refuses to admit any wrongdoing, saying that she's not going to lie for me because the truth is that I abandoned them. I told them that the only thing that have changed is that I no longer live there, but besides that, I have been carrying on all my responsibilities as a father. The following day, I took my kids to kindergarten and daycare, and they seemed like they were in good spirits. After dropping them off, I went to work. After work, I head straight to my client's job site to finish up some side projects. Then, I head back home to sleep, rinse, and repeat. I tried not to socialize that often because I didn't want to meet people that have watched my wife's embarrassing video or get made fun of again. So I socially isolated myself. Me and my wife discussed about moving out of town when we reconcile. I didn't have time for anything else. I didn't see my wife for the rest of the week, but we spoke often on the phone. Our conversation was mostly about coordinating our kids' activities, and sometimes she even dropped off food at my apartment. Throughout that week, there were no arguments. It was stress-free. No kids crying or asking for something. I felt like I was on a part-time vacation. I even thought that if at the end of this experience I moved back into the house, I plan on taking some time away from wife and kids to get my head together. Some of my friends would go on a week-long hunting vacation, every season in places like Montana and Arkansas. In fact, there was one coming up next month. I was always invited, but I've been putting it off because my wife always finds some excuse why I shouldn't go. And I usually fall for it. The prices are expensive, but my buddy gets some package discount price because of a group deal. The hunting trip was still about a month away, but I've already bought my ticket. We're going on Buddy's RV, and it would be a lot of fun, something nice to look up to in this challenging times. The next couple of weeks were pretty much the same, except that sometime in the middle of the week, the dishwashing machine broke down and my wife called me to come fix it. When I arrived at my house to fix the dishwashing machine, I looked around the living room and it was unrecognizable. The only times I visited my house is to pick up my kids on the driveway and pick up my tools for some side gigs. My tools are stored in the basement, and entrance to my basement is different from the main house. So I normally go through the entrance in the basement, and I don't really enter the main living area. When I went to fix the dishwasher, I noticed that my wife has furnished the living room. She changed the curtains and bought a new couch. I asked her what this was all about, and she said that she is trying to change things up. I fixed up the dishwasher and took that opportunity to get some things from the master bedroom. I noticed that my wife has bought lots of new outfits. We spoke about it, and she said that she has started going to the gym to get back in shape and try to improve herself. I felt kind of jealous. She's making all this effort to improve herself, and I felt like all this renovation was a way to forget about me. At every moment, I always questioned whether it was a good decision to leave the house, even though I know that it was for peace of mind. I started to doubt my reasons. About 2 weeks later, when the weather was getting colder, my wife told me that there was something wrong with the furnace. I came by to fix it, and I noticed more renovations. I haven't seen my wife closely since I came by to fix the dishwasher. I saw her on the driveway with my daughters, waiting for me to pick them up, but she was always wearing her baggy pajamas, so I wasn't able to see that she was losing some weight. I mentioned it to her. She said that it was self-improvement month. We spent some time talking, and I got the vibe that she's not as interested in me moving back. I mean, why would she? She has always seen me as the handyman in the house, and she is still getting that. And I'm still taking my kids to school and practice, and I am still contributing to the household. I was still paying my share of the mortgage, and she is getting all the benefits of having a man in the house, and she doesn't have to cook or have sex with me. So she's getting the best of both worlds. I told my wife about the hunting trip that I'm taking to Montana, and I expected her to object or say something to stop me, like, "It is dangerous," or "It costs too much." She didn't even object or ask questions or flinch. All she said was that she would make plans to pick up the kids from school. She was so easy to talk to, and I didn't feel any sense of resistance about anything. I should be happy about that, right? This is the kind of freedom that I wanted, but I felt like something was off. I thought maybe she was over me already, and I have concluded that she doesn't care if I come back or not. That was the vibe that I was getting from her. 2 weeks later, I went on the hunting trip with my buddies. Got back a week later, went to pick up my daughters for school the following Monday. I pulled up on the driveway, came out to open the door for my daughters, and got back in the car. My daughters were so happy to see me. My 5-year-old asked me if they were getting a new daddy. I thought that was a strange question, and I told her that Daddy is not going anywhere. I asked her why she thought she was getting a new daddy. She told me that there was a guy that stayed in the house while I was gone. I thought maybe she must have confused the man with my brother-in-law who used to come by and stay with us. But my daughter knows my brother-in-law long enough not to confuse him for another person. I still asked my daughter whether she was speaking about Uncle Jammy, but she said that his name was Jacob. I have never heard that name before. I couldn't log into my wife's social media or text because she had changed her passwords back when I moved out of the house. The rest of the day, I could think about nothing else but that name Jacob, trying to see if my wife has mentioned it before. Prior to my hunting trip, I noticed that my wife had tuned out of the reconciliation path. She wasn't enthusiastic to get back together. She just wanted me to be there to fix things for her. I decided to assume the worst-case scenario, that what my daughter said was true, and there was a man named Jacob that came to my house, and my wife may be dating him or having sex with him. I figure that if I acted like I wasn't sure who Jacob was, that allows my wife to deny any knowledge of him like she did on the Zex footage, where she tried to deny that there was anything going on and gaslit me. So I decided to visit her that evening. While my kids were asleep, I was going to surprise her by showing up without any notice that I was coming. But she wasn't surprised when she saw me. Maybe because she knew that I would be coming because I've been out of town all week. Thus far, our relationship is still very cordial, although I have a feeling that reconciliation is losing steam. We are still under the impression that we could reconcile. I had the keys, so I opened the front door. When she saw me, she asked me if I was hungry, and I said no. I told her that I would like to speak with her. We sat in the living room, and I told her straight away that I know what's going on with Jacob, and why is she carrying on an affair when we had agreed that we were on the path to reconciliation. I watched her body language to see how she reacted. She ran both fingers through her entire hair from top to bottom, because she knew that she'd been caught. She immediately raised her head up and told me that Jacob was a coworker and they are close at work, and she thought that since I wasn't around, that she called him to help her around the house. I asked her if it involved sleeping with her in our bedroom too. She looked at me with a strange look, and I raised my voice and told her to answer the question, and she admitted that they had only slept with each other twice. There was nothing between them. I ignored the fact that she just said they had sex twice, because I knew it was a lie. I knew there was a lot more times than that. I asked her how long the relationship has been going on. She started saying that if I was there and didn't abandon her and the kids, this wouldn't have happened. I knew she was trying to change the topic, so I yelled at her to answer the question, which is when she admitted that they'd been having an emotional relationship for over a year and it recently turned physical. I told her that I knew from the time we spoke with the marriage counselor that there was something else that she was hiding and wasn't telling me about. And that was the reason why she wanted us to stop the marriage counseling, because the therapist knew she was lying and wanted her to admit to it. I was too blind to see it. Looking back, maybe I should have known that I've been gaslit throughout the relationship and the foundation of our relationship was flawed, because I didn't really know who she was. Who knows how long they've carried on the affair? I've been reading infidelity posts enough to know that a woman that got ran through at a bachelor party can't just be satisfied with a mundane relationship with a simple guy like me. She would need something more to keep up that excitement. I wasn't buying the story that the physical affair only happened when I was gone, and because I was gone, I knew there was more to the story. I asked her how she wanted us to proceed with reconciliations if she's been sleeping with this guy for God knows how long, years maybe. She didn't attempt to correct me that she'd been sleeping with him for years, which is how I knew that it was obviously more than the 2 times she admitted. She said that she wasn't sure how to proceed. I calmly asked her if she loved him, and for a moment, she let her guard down, took a brief pause, and said that she didn't know. She looked at me when she said that to see how I would react, and I stood up from the couch and told her that it's time that we stop playing this game. I told her that there's no way that a woman that had had sex with 2 dancers and do all that stuff in front of her friends would only do it once. I told her that I'm glad she's happy with this guy, and I now have my reasons for legal separation. I told her that we have had a good run, with 2 beautiful daughters, and it's about time we called it quits. I used to question myself whether I did the right thing by moving out, and now I know that I was absolutely right to allow her the opportunity to make mistakes. I know that I would have probably lived the rest of my life like a cuckold fool if I had accepted her lies and gaslighting all these years. I would give credit to the marriage therapist for opening my eyes, although she didn't really clearly state that my wife was lying. I was smart enough to read in between the lines of her questions to decode where she was coming from. I guess it was one BS person to another, and I was just a student in their midst. At that moment, I knew my wife was very good at covering her tracks. I still felt like there was a lot more to the story, and I know that she may be leaving something out. When I stood up from the couch to walk out of the house, she told me that she still loves me, but I just ignored her and walked away. I went home that day upset, because I knew I wouldn't be seeing my kids as often as I would like. I knew that there's no going back from this. At the same time, I felt a sense of ease that I've been vindicated and she has been exposed as a cheater, and a cheater would always cheat. It is indeed quite eerie how true that quote is. I am not the religious type, but I slept well that night knowing that throughout this whole experience that the universe was behind me because I felt like things fell in line systematically to expose the lie that I was living. I mean, imagine what would have happened if my friend never told me about the video. The chain of events that occurred over the last few months happened to open my eyes to who I've been truly living with for the past 6 years. I called my dad the following day to tell him everything that I just found out, and he told me that I've handled things well, and that I should not feel bad about the situation because it wasn't my fault, and everything happens for a reason, and what has been hidden is now in the open. My only concern at this moment is my daughter's safety. I need to know the man she has been bringing around them, who he is. I'm sure you guys have heard about predators that date single moms with daughters for this sole purpose, and I don't know if I will forgive myself if that happens to them. The following day, I picked up my kids for school as before. My wife called me to check on me, asking me where we should go from here. She said that she still wants to reconcile with me and would go no contact with the other guy. I told her that she's been carrying on a relationship with him for years, so I don't think it really matters at this point. For the first time, she challenged me about the notion that the relationship had been going on for years. She claimed that it only turned sexual recently when I abandoned her and the children. This was an obvious deflection, and I wasn't falling for that. I told her that we were agreed that we were supposed to be working towards reconciliation, but instead, she carried out a sexual relationship and invited the man to our matrimonial home. And by the right, I should murder this guy, but instead, she wants me to accept that she cheated and still stay on the reconciliation path. She didn't know what to say after that. I told her that the right thing to do at this moment is to get divorced and focus on our daughters because she gave up on the relationship long time ago. She responded that it was me that gave up on the relationship when I walked out on them and that it wouldn't have happened if I stayed at home. I immediately hung up the phone because I didn't want to argue with her. As beautiful as she was, I knew she wouldn't have any problem finding another man that was maybe even better than me. And I hoped that she finds someone better for my daughter's sake. Because the worst case scenario is if she was banging random dudes in my house and putting my daughters in danger. The following day, I called one of her coworkers that she worked with for years. She had been working with my wife at that hospital for 2 years, and she also worked with my wife at the previous hospital she worked in before her current job. I called her out of the blue and told her that I recently had an injury at work, and I needed a male physical therapist, and my wife recommended a guy named Jacob, and if she knows anything about him. I told her that the reason why I was asking her was because I know she knows her stuff. She said she doesn't know any Jacob, and the only Jacob she knows was one of my wife's former clients at the previous job they worked at. I thanked her for telling me and got off the phone with her. I knew that I was deceptive in the way that I asked her the question, and eventually she would ask my wife about it. So I decided to confront my wife about the obvious lie that Jacob was her coworker. I couldn't wait to visit my wife at the house. Moreover, there is no telling when her coworker may call her and tell her about the strange call she received from her husband. So I acted immediately and called my wife to confront her. I called her and asked her why she had lied to me about who her affair partner was. That Jacob was a client of hers for more than 2 years, and she lied about it. I told her that it was my right to know that she is not bringing home criminals and predators next to my daughters. She responded that Jacob is not a criminal, that he is a widower and a businessman that owns several hotel chains in the area. She said he was clean and she has known him for years, and was her former client when he had an accident that his wife didn't survive. She said that they had a good chemistry, but since she was married, they couldn't move forward with it. He has been asking her out for years, so when I abandoned them, she decided to give it a try. She kept trying to blame me for everything, even as she admits to fault in the same sentence. I got off the phone with the impression that my wife has been carrying on a sexual relationship with one of her wealthier former clients for well over 2 years or more. I did a background on him, and the good news is that he doesn't fit the profile of a criminal or predator. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't jealous because this man was more successful than I am. But at the same time, I know that it's more important for me to know the truth that my wife continued to sleep behind my back after the bachelorette incident, and it is important for me to get a clean start. Some of you are saying that I should do a DNA test on my daughters. I don't have to because they look like me. Long story short, 2 months later, we got a divorce, and we split the proceeds. My wife moved in with her affair partner. He owns multiple houses, but his primary residence is in a city 50 miles from here. I also moved away from the city for a fresh start in another city. I found a new job that pays more, and I rented a condo with enough room to store my work things. Although I was happy to move away from the gossip, whispers, and embarrassment, it was difficult to get a contract in a new territory that I'm not familiar with. But I am glad to take up that challenge. Although I miss taking my kids to daycare every day, we still have shared custody with my daughters, and I see them every other week. The divorced life is not so bad, and the custody arrangement allowed me time to go after my hobbies. I haven't been dating at all, and I've been working a lot, and I don't see myself in any long-term relationship anytime soon.